I want to thank our sign language individuals who are here. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Also, Dr. Roose, the Chief Medical Officer of Mercy Hospital. Trinity Health is here, and representing Dr. Mark Kerouac, the President and CEO of Bay State Health Systems, is the very apt Dr. Sarah Hessler is here. We appreciate that. So she'll be coming up. And as we do, as we've done in the past, after the doctors give their update of their respected medical establishments, we'll take questions from the press, then I'll go into our cities, my cabinet heads' updates and reports. Now, Commissioner Helen Carlton Harris will go into it a little more. The MAVEN system with DPH on the state has been a little fluctuating. Again, we go on confirmed cases. I think they're starting to put in probable cases, so we're going to reconcile our numbers. But the numbers that we're going with, and again, we're going to stay on the weekends. I know we had a long weekend, but we want to stay consistent. Friday, we had 24 new cases. Saturday, 14 new cases. Sunday, 17 new cases, for a total over the weekend of 55. So we sort of went down a bit, which is good news, but we have to stay ever vigilant. Total confirmed cases, and again, we're trying to reconcile with MAVEN. We have currently 3,540 since this has started. That could fluctuate, whether up or down, most likely up, and Commissioner Carlton Harris will reconcile that and we'll give it out the appropriate time. One good thing, there were no deaths, which we very appreciative of that, and for those who have lost a loved one, to their families, our heart and soul and sympathy and thoughts and prayers and encouragement go out to each and every one of you. So that keeps us at 132. And if you look at it, I think in conversations with Helen, we had one probably for the last maybe month and a half, which is one too many, but again, status quo, 132 total, which leaves us at 57 that are white for 43.2%, 31 that are black, 23.5%, 42 that are Hispanic, which accounts for 31.8%, 2 that are Asian, which accounts for 1.5%. Obviously, where these deaths occurred, stay status quo. Long-term care facilities, 57. Residential, 75. Senior meals continue to be delivered to our seniors in need. Very appreciative of that. Governor Baker stopped the spread and continues with AMR, but I'm very thankful to Bay State Health. You're expanding your testing. 298 Carew Street. That's going to be on Wednesdays and Thursdays. Helen will speak more about this 1 to 4 appointment. This is through the 29th of October. You have to call for appointment between 5 and 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. Packages of, I think, up to 10 free masks are going to be given out to families, and that number is 413-794-0012. So again, thank you to Bay State, Dr. Kerouac, and yourself for expanding that. Flu shots are city. We're doing our flu shot clinic. I got my flu shot last week, and it was painless. Please do it. Please do it. St. Catherine's, Commissioner Carlton Harris informs me at St. Catherine's Church parking lot, we had 85 last week. This week we're going to be at Thursday, October 15th, 11 to 2 at the Raymond A. Jordan Senior Center, right in Blum Park, so that's 11 to 2. And getting back to Bay State, I believe yours starts on the 14th, or expansion of the testing on that. Also, and I think Economic Development Director, Chief Development Officer Tim Sheen will go into, but Secretary Mike Keneally called me on behalf of Governor Baker yesterday and to let me know that he's going to expand the RAF program, which is a balancing act to be able to help out tenants with the eviction process, tenants who are in need, and landlords, especially small landlords, who are trying to make ends meet there, and of course that goes to tax base too. We're already doing that with Wayfinders. That's been our conduit. $2 million has been put there months and months ago for tenants to help pay utilities, mortgages, and rents, and in turn landlords, if their tenants need that. It's $2 million. I think we've already gone well over 25% of that, so we'll continue to monitor that. But I had a good conversation with Secretary Keneally and that RAF program. Just going off the top of my head, I think he said it was about $110 million. I'm not sure, but Director Sheen's going to look into that because Wayfinders is our RAF liaison. So that would help out tenants who are in need and help out landlords, small landlords. So we want to continue to do that. The Oasis food pantry continues at Central High School. John Foley and crew, and working with the city and the Food Bank of Western Massachusetts every Friday. Again, we're serving about 3,500 families there with foods, vegetables, fruits, and food and meats, milk on that, so we continue with that. We continue to move forward with the DOJ. Good conversations with the DOJ last week for about an hour and a half, and more to be done, but they're impressed with what we've been able to accomplish. And with Judge Ireland, who has been my direct conduit to lend advice and wisdom and direction on our Saturday conversations. By the way, DOJ, and I think Commissioner Clapper will go into it, DOJ has listed the top 2 body-worn camera programs in the nation. In the nation it started. Springfield, Massachusetts 1, Tampa, Florida 2. So that's quite a testament. We appreciate that. The Commissioner Calvi is unable to be with us today, but his update, nobody's down with COVID-19, which is fantastic. He did say to me, though, that they're getting, I don't want to say a rash, but a number of cooking fires, kitchen fires, and that is being caused with people wearing loose clothing, and it gets caught on fire. So police and fire have been responding to that. So to each and every one of you, when you're cooking on your stove, to make sure that that loose clothing is not near the flame. Please, we want you to be okay. Commissioner Clapper, on the police side, 1 is down with COVID-19. Good news, our academy started yesterday. 34 from Springfield, 4 from West Side we're helping out, and Springfield College 2. So that's good news. Everybody was temperature checked, everybody was tested, no one with COVID-19, which is very, very good. You know, we've made some, Commissioner Clapper and the brave and dedicated men and women in blue have made some really good arrests, gun arrest, 4 taken off the street. We were able to get that person who kept breaking into homes and cars on 16 acres, I believe that was Mr. Gonzalez. Cheryl will have that, but the courts let him out, so we want to make you aware of that. Good detective work there. We grabbed him. Again, he was robbing houses and robbing cars. He has a detailed record, but once again, the courts let him out. Even more egregious is that on some of these gun charges, arrests that we made, Mr. Critchlow, who was notorious with his record, once again was let out by the courts. So I need help from the courts and the judges. These are bad individuals that should not be on my streets or my neighborhoods, your streets, your neighborhoods on it. But I don't know how many times we have to keep arresting these repeat violent criminal offenders. That revolving door needs to stop with our court system on that. So, the acres, we made that arrest. I know some of the streets there, cars and homes, but our court system let that individual out. Some serious gun charges, which Commissioner Clapper will go into, but Mr. Critchlow, very, very serious, but the courts let him out again. Absolutely terrible, absolutely terrible. Superintendent Warwick indicates to me we're nearly at $3.5 million, 3.5 million meals served. And again, that is breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. About 94,768 went out for this weekend. I want to commend Superintendent Warwick, Paul Foster, IT and his team, my city side, Andy Doty, Bobby Maggi. Ransomware did try to attack our school system IT. Everything is up and running. We're in recovery and restore mode. Teaching is going on today. With Bob Kirshner, our industrial hygienist, the school building review continues. iPads continue to be delivered out to our pre-K students. Director Chris Signoli indicates to me that nobody's down with COVID, which is fantastic. And they're in good shape. As with Pat Sullivan, they continue on post-review of the storm cleanup activities. Director Pat Sullivan of Parks and Facilities indicates to me, again, they continue reviews with Bob Kirshner, industrial hygienist, with all our city buildings. He is currently updating the policies for the winter cleaning aspects that are going to go on. Storm cleanup continues on. There's still some more stuff that needs to be done. My CAFO finances, TJ Plant, we're down $6 million since this COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic started. We're down $1.15 million in FY21 lost revenue in our budget. We've knocked the deficit down to $4.9 million, being able to offset on grants. In total that we have spent, or deficit spent with grants or deficit spending since it started, $9.3 million to be able to provide for our residents, business community, and the workforce, and protection and preserving the workforce of the city of Springfield employees. Director Tim Sheehan will speak to you again. Those two RFPs that we spoke about a week ago or a couple weeks ago, direct technical assistance to all our businesses will be going out, and workforce development, which is really going to be tied to tech jobs. That's going to be going out at that point in time. The legal, HR, and labor update was a status quo from City Solicitor Ed Pikula and Attorney Director Bill Mahoney. And with that, let me move into Dr. Roose from Mercy Medical Center to give the update, and then Dr. Sarah Hessler from Bay State will continue to give their hospital updates. I appreciate deeply our continued collaboration and coordination. Knock on wood, if and when a serious uptick was to occur, we're ready to handle it. I hope it doesn't happen. I'm encouraged by some of the numbers we have right now starting to go down, but that's because of each and every one of you doing what you're supposed to do, wearing the mask, washing your hands, keeping your physical or social distance of 6 feet or more away, and if you don't feel good, stay home. So you've done it before. You can do it again. We want to keep this trend going so we can get out of the red zone, get back into the yellow, eventually back into the green, and then eventually get rid of this forsaken COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. Without further ado, let me bring up the Chief Medical Officer of Mercy Medical Center, Trinity Healthcare Systems, Dr. Robert Roose.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you to your entire team for continuing your leadership amidst the pandemic. And I want to thank the media for their continued focus on reporting accurate information about this and bringing the communication directly to you all in the community. I hope everyone had a nice week last week and long weekend. As the weather has started to change and we're seeing the leaves change their colors, it's a beautiful time here in New England. But that is also a reminder, of course, that we are approaching a colder season. The winter, as it will come over the next few months, which of course will bring less time for the outdoor activities in many cases, some more concern and risk for the transmission of respiratory illnesses like COVID. And while there are some promising signs that we have tamped down any dramatic increases in infections, I think there still is some significant reason for some concern as we approach these next few months. At Mercy, we've started to actually see a slight uptick in two of our key metrics, hospitalized patients and the percentage of positive tests. It has been very slight, and overall our levels are still very low, but it's evidence that the virus remains quite active in the greater Springfield community and throughout the Pioneer Valley. As of this morning, we have 3 hospitalized patients, none of which are in the intensive care unit, which may not sound like high numbers, but as you know, we have achieved 0 hospitalized COVID patients on 2 separate occasions, and we had as many as 5 at one point over the course of the past week. In addition, our test positivity rate has gone up slightly and has been hovering around 2% over the course of the past 3 weeks after a few months at around 1%. This past week, we were at 1.9%. These trends that we've felt at Mercy have also been felt in other systems and throughout the Commonwealth. Massachusetts has seen an increase in hospitalized patients from a nadir of around 300 about a month ago to now over 500 on average. We've also seen the test positivity rate change slightly. It had gone from 0.8 up to 1.2 and now is remaining about 1%. But the percentage of people that are testing positive has climbed to over 3.5%. and actually was more than 4% on 2 separate occasions over the course of the past week. That, unfortunately, is a trend line that is gradually but going up. That's a sign of ongoing community transmission, of course, and many of which we think is related to asymptomatic infections or people with few symptoms earlier in the disease. That relates to the number of communities that are now deemed as higher risk, or red or orange on the map that's released weekly by the Department of Public Health. Last week, there were 40 communities, nearly double what it was several weeks prior, that were in the red zone, which means that the incidence rate of new infections is more than 8 per 100,000. It not only includes urban areas centered around Boston and Worcester, but also some smaller communities, even here in Western Massachusetts. And last week included both Springfield, Holyoke, but also Amherst and Sunderland. These are reminders that the virus can be easily transmitted, not only in areas where they're more densely populated, but we're seeing clusters of infections related to gatherings, family spread, and other events that are occurring. Nationwide, we've also continued to see the number of infections go up. And we will now cross over 8 million confirmed coronavirus infections over the course of this week. And the epidemiologic curve of these new infections, as you've been following along, has looked a little bit like a roller coaster. I'm going to show this just right now, which shows the map of the United States' new daily infections, which early in the pandemic had an abrupt increase, followed by a decrease, followed by a second increase, then a decrease, and now you can see we're starting to see an increase with what is potentially the 3rd such wave of new infections. From an epidemiologic standpoint, this is an epidemic that is described in that way that is a propagated epidemic, one that transmits between person to person. And the ways in which we can see that spread, it can result, as we've seen here on that graph, in more and more infections with each successive wave, which is a significant concern. The ways in which you can stop that progressive propagated spread is either through, of course, devastation, which none of us would want, the acquisition of herd immunity amongst a significant population such that there are no longer enough people vulnerable to the illness to continue to see further spread, or proper control measures being implemented. Considering the fact that we are a long way from herd immunity due to natural infection, as the estimates would place the infection rate in the United States at probably somewhere around 10% across the country, the reality that we have not yet instituted proper control measures countrywide is something that should give us all some pause and concern. This is a virus that has not gone away with the warmer weather in the summer. This is a virus that will not go away in the colder weather of the winter. Right now, the United States leads the world in confirmed coronavirus infections and leads the world in the number of coronavirus-related deaths. neither of which are, of course, distinctions of honor, but rather, I think at its best, tragic missteps, and at its worst, catastrophic failure. As a country, we have a death rate that is greater than many comparable nations, and we are still testing far fewer people regularly than we should based on the number of infections that we have in the country. This past week, it was notable that two of the most prestigious medical journals, the Journal of American Medical Association and the New England Journal of Medicine, both published important research and opinion pieces articulating the grim nature of the statistics and the reality that we face as a country together. We've lost more than 210,000 people from this disease, but there have been between 20 to 25% more deaths during this past period of this year than there were in prior years. 215,000 more deaths overall between March and July than there were in 2019. Only 2/3 of those are right now attributed directly to COVID. The other third may be directly, maybe indirectly related to COVID through other infections that could, or other illnesses that could have increased complications when somebody was co-infected with COVID, like a pneumonia or a heart condition. It may also be the result of people self-imposing delays in care because of concerns around overcrowding hospitals or the fear of transmission. It could also be due to worsening suicide and overdose rates, another pandemic that we're addressing as a community and country. But not only has the death rate related to COVID in the United States not decreased as much as it has in other countries that had high mortality rates early in the pandemic, like Italy, but the economic recovery has also been lagging behind other countries who did a better job at tamping down spread earlier on. We have been saying this every week. It has been consistent from myself, from the mayor and his team, from Dr. Kerouac and the representatives from Bay State Health. If we can suppress and eliminate this infection, and we can make progress on our journey to zero COVID, then we can recover as a community, both economically, from a health perspective, and from a family and livelihood perspective at a much faster rate. But yet, we are challenged because at the federal level, we continue to see what has been a disjointed and a disconcerting approach, one where facts have regularly been disregarded. At Mercy Medical Center and throughout Trinity Health, we continue to take this pandemic very seriously, and we urge you to do the same. We recognize the impact that this has had on all of our lives, from our health to lives lost, to lost jobs, to disruption in all of our, what we would consider to be normal behaviors. We believe it's important to communicate collaboratively, accurately, informed by science, and in a timely fashion. We are healing providers in our community, and we believe that this type of communication and approach is one that's consistent with our core values of reverence, where we honor the dignity of all people, justice, where we do what's right, and safety. This is an approach, to be clear, that is not one to be, quote, afraid, end quote, of COVID. This is an approach that it is essential to be responsible to the facts and respectful of what COVID has and will continue to do to the lives of people, our communities, and to each other. This is also to recognize that there is not a magical, quote, cure for COVID. It is true that at Mercy Medical Center and at systems across the state and country that we have fewer patients that are in the intensive care unit and on ventilators. It is true that we have patients that are hospitalized, but they are not staying as long in the hospital as they did earlier in the pandemic. And it is true that we are seeing fewer COVID patients die than earlier in this disease. We are proud of that. We have expanded our access to treatment, but it should be understood that this is a direct result of the scientific process, right, of the evolution of nursing and care protocols, of access to more effective treatments, and a better understanding to keep people safe. The goal at this point is not to search for a magical cure, but it is and should be for eradication and prevention of this disease. And so our approach is also to continue to recognize that as we enter this colder weather season, we will continue to follow the practices that we've followed all along to honor our commitment to safe and accessible care for you. We have adequate personal protective equipment, or PPE, with over 30 days on hand if we were to need it. We have masks for you at our entrances. We have maintained our surge plans with increased bed capacity if we were to need it. And we have expanded our ability to both perform COVID testing as well as influenza testing in order to have more timely turnaround results. This week, we've also begun our colleague influenza program, where all colleagues are mandated to receive a vaccine for influenza this year, unless there's a medical or religious exception. I myself actually took my vaccine first thing this morning. While I wouldn't call this a surge, I would say that we are seeing some early signs that there could be some concern. I think this is a critical juncture in the course of this pandemic. I think that this is the time for us to battle the fatigue that we've been having, to know that the virus itself has not grown weary of spreading, to reinforce the things that we've been doing that have kept the transmission to a minimum, and be sure that we don't regress in this fight. There are strategies that we have employed, and we know that they work. The amount of evidence that has accumulated has been striking. And it is up to us, and we all have this within our control and our power to deploy them. So as always, I'll conclude by reminding us to please wear a mask, to practice hand hygiene, to keep your physical distance from each other, to be cautious about where you go and who you interact with, and most importantly, let us continue always, as we've done here in our community, to let science be our guide. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Roose. I want to thank Patrick Leonardo from AMR, who is here, your partnership, and I hope your mom is feeling better too. Before I bring up Dr. Sarah Hessler, Bay State, the Rays of Hope, it's Breast Cancer Month. You will see that the always stylish Commissioner of Health and Human Services, Helen Carlton Harris, will be coming up pretty in pink. And City Hall, as we usually do with the school department, we will do our pink and denim day the Thursday before the walk. This year there's not a walk, but a virtual cast, and we're hopeful to raise thousands of dollars for that great cause that Lucy Giugio started, and that Bay State Health System has done a tremendous job to hopefully someday eradicate breast cancer. Dr. Roose brought up, and I'm sure Dr. Hessler is going to bring up too, and Helen, on the mask. I have been noticing, and it reflects in our numbers, younger people are getting this. And I notice a lot of times younger people are not wearing masks and sort of flaunting it. This can happen to you. So I'm very appreciative that Dr. Sarah Hessler is here, again representing Bay State Health System, and she will give the update pertaining to Bay State. After that, the media, please, any questions you might have for Dr. Hessler or Dr. Roose, that'll be the appropriate time. Dr. Hessler, thank you so much.
I have a few notes. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting us again to join you and give an update from Bay State Health. And thank you, Dr. Roose, for your very eloquent comments. I really appreciate being able to collaborate. At Bay State Health, just building on what Dr. Roose has already mentioned, we have treated 1,194 patients with COVID-19. Of those, 249 patients have died, mostly in the early phase of the pandemic in March, April, and May. The remaining patients out of those were either discharged home or to a facility, about 2/3, 1/3 split there. Currently, at Bay State, we have 15 patients hospitalized. None of those are in the intensive care unit. At Bay State Reference Labs, we've performed over 74,000 tests for customers of Bay State Health, an additional 42,000 tests through outreach efforts to other facilities and contract work. So as the mayor pointed out earlier, Bay State Reference Labs is participating in the state initiative that's called Stop the Spread. We're offering free testing. This is testing that is without a provider's order, but you do, as he mentioned, need to call in advance in order to schedule a time for you to come in, and that way things flow smoother. And we are able that way to maintain social distancing for our customers. So it's Wednesday and Thursday every week in October, and it's between 1 and 4 p.m. Another detail is that it's limited to 150 patients because that's how many people we can handle in that time period. So again, call in advance to ensure that you have a time slot for yourself if you wish to get tested. Again, this is free and without a provider's order. The number is 794-0012, 413 area code. The testing site is at 298 Roose Street in Springfield. There's an additional testing site with the same capacity in Greenfield at 164 High Street in Greenfield. So I wanted to, again, reflect on some of the issues that we've been seeing in Bay State community, Springfield community, and the wider region that we serve around this increase in COVID cases. What we're seeing in our data, we see about 1/3 of the patients that test positive for COVID-19 are tested and managed through Bay State Health System. And we keep track of some of the epidemiologic linkages between people. What we're seeing is that this is a tremendous amount of family clustering. So one or more people who work in the community or are out in the community interacting with other people will get sick. Their family members then acquire it because people are by and large not wearing masks and often not practicing social distancing within their own family unit. It's difficult when a family unit is very large to maintain social distancing, or when a family is clustered into multi-generational homes and don't have much space to spread out. But what we'd like to do is encourage you to remember that social distancing, meaning trying to maintain 6 feet apart, is definitely doable for many, many family members. And especially considering that a lot of young people who acquire the disease either remain completely asymptomatic or have very mild symptoms, and it may not occur to them that they have COVID-19. It can then get passed to more vulnerable members of the family. So maintaining that social distancing is really key until we achieve a time when we can go back to the intensity of interactions that we all crave and miss. So with that, I will stop talking and invite you to come back up for questions. Great.
Questions for Dr. Hessler, Dr. Roose, Audrey?
Hi, I wanted to ask both of you about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine trial and how it was causing someone sick. Just your guys' reaction to it and whether or not it's common because not really announced.
Happy to just, yeah, so I think this, from what I understand about this situation, one of the pharmaceutical companies that's in process of testing a coronavirus vaccine had suspended their trial after an unexplained illness or reaction related to the vaccine. Without having more further information, and this is a standard part of conducting vaccine trials, is not something that should draw any increased concern or alarm. It is actually important that the pharmaceutical companies, vaccine makers, take the diligence and the time to explore and study each type of reaction if they are serious. before continuing to progress. And so at this point, I would expect to just wait and hear more about what that was and if that will impact the continuation of their trial. We have had other manufacturers do similar things in response to potential neurologic sequelae or side effects, and that has resulted in the suspension of some of the continuation of the trials in certain areas, but not globally. And so at this point, I don't have more further information specifically, but just comment on it being a typical part of ensuring the safety of a vaccine.
No, that's correct. That is exactly correct. There are multiple vaccine candidates that are in clinical trials now, and they are halted for safety reasons if they crop up.
Thank you, Dr. Hessler.
Okay. Yeah, Dr. Hessler, I just want to pick up on some of the comments you made about social distancing with
Sure.
family members.
Yep.
I mean, currently, the current guidelines, for example, in church services allow close family members to sit together. And so, are you talking about, I mean, when you're talking about family members, social distancing, can you expand a little bit? Are you talking about, you know, grandparents coming over to visit, that sort of thing, or people who are actually living together all the time?
Both. Right. And so, so you make some really good points. So family units that live together all the time are a different situation than distant family members coming in to visit. So we can tackle the second one first. So distant family members coming in to visit should prompt everyone to wear a mask all the time. Those people do not live with you. They may be related to you, they may be friends, but you have no idea whether or not they're infected or carrying, you know, asymptomatically infected, and they have no idea whether you're infected and carrying or could potentially transmit. And therefore, you want to wear masks and practice social distancing. In the home with our own family members, we need to remember that those who are going out and interacting in the community, maybe they're working in professions, maybe they are you know, providing childcare or attending religious services, etc. They may pick it up in the community. We want to always make sure that we try as much as we can to maintain distance from each other. That's difficult when you're sleeping in the same bed with somebody, okay? I mean, right? But the virus is transmitted through mostly, predominantly, droplet spread, okay? And those droplets, when we exhale them, fall 3 to 6 feet away from us. And so, in as much as we can, maintaining more distance between each other, simply stepping a little bit away from your family members when you can, helps to decrease the number of people in a household that become sick from one member bringing it in, if that makes sense. This is very difficult with small children, with people that need care, and of course these things are, you know, efforts that will require personal, right, personal understanding of what your limitations are. But as we think about those who are traveling out into the community and potentially coming home and bringing it home, how can we try to alter our lives in ways that allow us to maintain a little more distance, a few more feet? I stand a few more feet away from him. I don't have to stand right next to him all the time. And this is the way that we can protect our families from each other if we have people that are interacting in the community. The other thing that's perhaps the most important thing that can happen is that family members who are out in the community take the responsibility of wearing a mask when you are out in the community. If everybody does that, then we're not as likely to bring it home inadvertently to our own family members. And so it's really about personal responsibility in addition. Did that answer your question?
Yes,
Yeah.
thanks.
Thank you, Dr.
Did you want to comment?
No, nothing else to add.
Audrey?
One other question too, there's a now documented case of a person getting it, recovering, and then getting coronavirus again. Is this something that you guys are going to be like keeping a closer eye on in your own health communities to see maybe?
Someone take it.
Sure.
Yeah, happy to. It's a great question. This is an area of uncertainty within the medical literature and within, it's kind of on the forefront of science. We have been concerned for many, many months about the duration of immunity to SARS-CoV-2. And for months, we had not seen any evidence of reinfection. So we have that many months of evidence that antibodies persist for that period of time. Now there are a number of case reports of verified reinfection with SARS-CoV-2. And this is through the use of whole genome sequencing, so that the first specimen is available, the second specimen is available. They do these very fancy studies looking at the genetic sequencing of the virus both times. If they see that there is a difference in the genetic fingerprint of the virus from one time to the other, it's considered a confirmed case of reinfection. These are extremely rare. We are talking a few handfuls of patients that have a verified reinfection out of the millions and millions and millions of cases over the last 10 months that this virus has occurred. Currently, we are in the process of creating protocols within Bay State Health for determining if there is a likelihood that someone is reinfected with SARS-CoV-2. We do not believe that we have seen anybody that has a bona fide reinfection.
Dr. Hessler is an expert in this area, epidemiology and infectious disease, and would support everything she says. From a practical standpoint, I just want to highlight what that means for patients who may be coming in with respiratory symptoms. If they've had a known COVID infection in the past, and they are presenting now with respiratory symptoms, and it's been within 90 days or perhaps even a little bit longer, they may not be retested for COVID, and that's important for people to know. Because it may just continue to show virus that they could otherwise be shedding for long periods of time, and we will look for other explanations for why they may be having those symptoms. There could be situations where, in consultation with infectious disease or otherwise, we may, continue down a path to explore whether or not there could be another coronavirus infection, another COVID infection, I should say. But that would be extremely unlikely, as Dr. Hessler mentioned.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah.
I wanted to clarify something you said before.
Sure.
That the basically treated almost 1,200 patients. When you say treated, is that just anybody who walked into the hospital and got care, or is it someone who's been admitted for it?
Hospitalized for that, correct. Yep.
And I also have another question, which I suppose either one of you could answer. I know last week I asked you a question about certain procedures, and you kind of begged off with saying it's more public health, officials kind of thing. And so I'm kind of asking you to pundit again, but I hope you can answer this one. You sometimes see people who are medical professionals on TV who will say, we have to do X, right now, or, this has to change immediately in terms of what the reopening plan or whatever else is. Can you offer any kind of guidance that people should have to, absorb these kind of comments in context? Like, who should we be listening to? You're an infectious disease expert. Dr. Roose is the chief medical officer at Mercy. You have a level of authority, but no disrespect to doctors generally, but anybody with an MD isn't necessarily qualified to tell us how we're supposed to be doing everything differently on television. So I was hoping maybe you might be able to offer some thoughts on that.
Sure. So
I'm sorry.
I'll try. Let me see if I can rephrase your question. It's my understanding of what you're asking is that it seems like there's so much information out there about COVID-19, and it's hard to know who to believe.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, so I'll put it in a nutshell. Okay. So I believe that you should believe in science. The science is going to help us to understand the process of this disease, how it infects people, and how we can protect ourselves from that. The best representation of that science is through public health officials. Those public health officials are represented at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the World Health Organization, and our state and local health departments. As medical professionals working in this arena, we partner with them very closely. And as physicians and scientists, We help to provide the research and the science that informs the information that they're communicating. Anything to add?
Any other questions of Dr. Hessler? Roose, Mike, Mastrelli?
No, they already answered the question.
Okay. Thank you so
Great,
much.
thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate all your efforts.
Thanks, everyone.
And stay healthy and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hessler. Thank you, Dr. Roose. I think once again you hear that you seem to have a disjointed message coming out from the federal level, and we've indicated that many a times, basing this on science, public health, and medicine, not politics. And I think that's key. And speaking with that, our Dr. Anthony Fauci is Health and Human Services Commissioner Helen Colton Harris, who is, her and her team done yeoman work on getting a handle on this, and we're hopeful to knock it down. She's going to show you some charts here that will be eye-opening a bit. So without further ado, Commissioner Helen Colton Harris.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you as always for your leadership. I want to start by thanking Kevin Chaffee, Alvin Allen, Axiom Blue, Tim Sheehan, the members of the Department of Health and Human Services, of course. Kevin and Alvin and Axiom Blue stepped in when Jason was unable because of vacation to do the maps. Tim Sheehan brought 5 maps over here, and I tried to pick them up and bring them in here. So thank you, Tim. You did a great job. Appreciate you. So we want to start with the Massachusetts update. Right now, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has 136,168 confirmed cases, and 2,735 are probable. The map that you are seeing on the top is the map of the cases in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. As was mentioned, there are 40 cities and towns that are now red on that map. And so we've seen those numbers double over the last 2 weeks. In the city of Springfield, our cases last week, on Monday, October 5th, were 22. Tuesday, October 6th, 9. Wednesday, October 7th, 22. Thursday, October 8th, 24. Friday, October 9th, 24. Saturday, October 10th, 14. And Sunday, October 11th, 17. We have currently 34 cases, less than we did last week. Last week was 166. This week, it's 132. So as the mayor indicated, we do see the data going in the right direction. I am going to take the time to talk to you a little bit about what we're seeing in the city of Springfield statistically. The chart that Molly has just put up is the confirmed COVID-19 cases. As you can see, 30 and under are 49%, 31 to 50 are 30%, and 51 and over right now is 21%. This chart is based on 108 cases. I will show you the entire 132 cases, but this is based on 108 cases. If you remember last week, 54.5 were under the age of 30. This week, the under the age of 30 is 50%. Last week, the 31 to 50-year-old was 28.6. This week, the 31 to 50-year-old is 29.6, which makes this week 79.6 under 50, as related to last week's 83.1. I am going to now break the ages out a little more for you. What I think is important to note here is the 0 to 13-year-old age group. The 0 to 13-year-old age group is important because what we're looking at is a 5-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, 4 1-year-olds, and 2 9-year-olds. So those of us who believe that COVID-19 is not affecting our children, it definitely is, based on the data that we have of last week's cases, those 132. The 11 to 20-year-old, there were 19 of them. There were 13 in the 0 to 10-year-olds. We have 5 19-year-olds, 3 14-year-olds, 2 13-year-olds, 2 20-year-olds, 1 15-year-old, 1 17-year-old, 1 11-year-old. And so in the 11 to 20 year, those 19 individuals do represent a range that goes from 11 to 20. And so it's important again to recognize young people are not immune. And then the 21 to 30-year-old, a 24-year-old, 21-year-old, 28-year-olds, there are 3 28-year-olds, 1 24-year-old, 2 21-year-olds, 3 28-year-olds, 3 23-year-olds, and 2 22-year-olds, and 2 20-year-olds. It's important, again, I take the time to break those out because I want you young people to understand clearly that this virus is impacting you significantly. And so we know that there are the long haulers symptoms that can happen. So you may not feel these symptoms right now as young people, but you could potentially, it could potentially have an impact on your longevity, on your life, and you could develop chronic diseases as it relates to COVID-19. So be clear that it is important, young people, to take this virus seriously, and we are seeing younger and younger ages. Again, as we look at the data in another way, so 0 to 10-year-olds, 10%, 11 to 20-year-olds, 14%, 21 to 30-year-olds, 16%, 31 to 40-year-olds, 11%, 41 to 50-year-olds, 14%, 51 to 60-year-olds, 6%, 61 to 70, 7%, 71 to 80, 3%, and 81 to 90, 1%. That other category indicates that we were not able to get those ages from our data. We're going to move to cases by ages by bar graph. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time with this. It is 13 in the 0 to 10, 19 in the 11 to 20, 21 to 30 was 21, and 31 to 40, 14, and then 41 to 50, 18, 51 to 68, 61 to 79, 71 to 84, and then 81 to 92. And again, the 24 represents unknown. Going to move to zip codes now. Molly, could you help me with the zip codes? Thank you. I need one today. Okay, so 01101, 1 case. 01103, 4 cases. 01104, 15. 01105, 19. 01107, 7. 01108, 31. 01109, 26. 01118, 4. 01109, 12. 01129, 3. 01128, 0. And 01151, 10. Now we're going to look at that statistically. Molly, could you pull the statistical wheel for me. Thank you.
All right, Dana.
So 01101 is 1% of the cases that we're seeing. 01103, 3% of our cases. 01104, 11% of the cases. 01105, 14%. And again, we're talking about last week. 01107, 5%. 01108, 24%. 01109, 20%. 01118, 3%. 01119, 9%. 01129, 2%. 01151, 8%. If we add 01108 and 01109, that's 44% of the cases that we saw last week in those two zip codes. And so we give you this information so that you know what your zip code looks like, but also because we want to be transparent. We believe if we're transparent, then it will be easier for you to see yourself in this virus by age and by zip code. We had a Zoom call with DPH last week, and they've offered us some resources in the city of Springfield. Communication mitigation strategies rely on testing, contact tracing, isolation, quarantine for those who have been diagnosed COVID positive, and we want to stop community transmission. The State Department of Public Health is going to have offered PSAs and COVID ambassadors. COVID ambassadors are individuals from the city of Springfield, and the state has told us that they have relationships with community-based organizations. However, I have asked them to send us the name of those organizations so that we, as a city, can be clear around what community-based organizations they're using, and that we, in fact, know them in the city of Springfield and have a relationship with them. I show you that data because we will be using our data from the Department of Health and Human Services to do the community outreach in those zip codes where we see a rise in COVID-19 positive cases. And we also know that Stop the Spread is really doing an excellent job, and I am very grateful to AMR. Overall, they've tested 17,310 individuals. Of that, 7,150 are Springfield residents. They are reporting to date 573 Springfield residents that have been positive. They continue to test until the end of October through Stop the Spread, 9 to 4 daily at Eastfield Mall and at their Cottage Street site, but their Cottage Street site is by appointment. AFC Urgent Care is still testing. Cooley Street, 11 a.m. to 7, Monday through Friday, Saturday and Sunday, 10 to 4 by appointment. We are waiting to confirm Fallon's site. That is to be determined. Bay State, as you heard, beginning Wednesday, October 14, Wednesday and Thursday from 1 to 4 at 298 Roose Street. They also will be giving out free face masks at their testing site. Contact tracing, we continue to do contact tracing. Again, if you are reached out to from one of our staff, please answer the phone call. Please give them the information they need. Please isolate. Please quarantine if you are asked to do so for 14 days. The only way we're going to get a handle on stopping community spread is if individuals are participating, helping us through changed behavior. I would also say that flu shots are very important. We held a drive-through flu clinic at St. Catherine's last week. We gave, through the Department of Health and Human Services, 85 residents received flu shots. Thank you, AMR, again for your assistance at our flu clinic. You were absolutely amazing, so thank you. Our next flu clinic is at the Raymond A. Jordan Senior Center, October 15th, at this Thursday, from 11 to 2. It will be a drive-through, and we will be having a flu clinic for our community and our city employees. There's also a flu clinic that's going to be Wednesday, October 21st, from 2 to 5 at Duggan Academy. Everyone 9 years and older is welcome. There is a registration that's necessary. It will be online. And there's also the same day from 2 to 5 at Forest Park Middle School, a flu clinic. Registration is required or asked, and we will be putting this link up on the city's website. The school department continues to work towards getting their students flu shots and are doing that job to the degree possible, working with community partners. Travel orders. The only states that you can come into Massachusetts from that does not require a quarantine is New York, DC, Connecticut, Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire. Thank you, Mr. Maloney, for helping me with those states. I had them wrong, and he was very kind, so thank you. So in the end, we are seeing an uptick in the city of Springfield and across the nation. What we use as public health prevention right now is very simple. We ask you to wash your hands. We ask you to physically distance or social distance, and we ask you to wear a face covering. It is not responsible for individuals in leadership to say that you should not wear a face covering. The responsible thing to do is to wear a face covering. Remember what I told you around the young people who are becoming infected. Dr. Hessler talked about it, but if you live in a multi-generational household, we are seeing clusters in homes. We are seeing clusters in neighborhoods. And we have chosen not to give street addresses or more specific information because we know that there is still discriminatory practices that could potentially go on around COVID-19. So we give you just enough information from a data perspective to make good decisions. That's our goal. Make good decisions. Please change your behavior and take this seriously. Individuals 30 and under, you are the fastest growing COVID-19 positive population in the city of Springfield. Take that seriously because we take it seriously. We want you to be healthy. We want your families to be healthy. We care very deeply about you, and until and unless you take this virus seriously, none of us will return to the society that we want to live in and have the economic prosperity that we deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Carlton Harrison. Molly Shea, you were Vanna White today, helping out Helen. We appreciate that. Helen did indicate, and what we've seen in numbers and reports I get, that a lot of clusters. We see a lot of families, same addresses with a number of people being COVID-19 positive. Now, I have to say, 01108, 01109, you have other areas in the city that are residential and that have multiple housing complexes. Their numbers are down. Their numbers are down. So as Helen indicated, and as Dr. Hessler and Dr. Roose, 0108, 0109, these are family clusters. And a lot with young people, not doing the right thing, not wearing their mask. You see them out there. No mask on whatsoever, out and about. So this is a shout out to 0108 and 0109 These are coming from residential family cluster areas. So these little things do work, because those other areas, those other zip codes, which are residential but have heavy, at times heavy, multiple housing complexes, their numbers have gone down. So 30 and under, please heed the advice. We'll now move to the public safety component update. Again, Commissioner Calvey's unavailable today. I gave his update. We'll now have the Police Commissioner of the City of Springfield, Cheryl Clapper.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. We have one officer still out with COVID virus, and we were, as the mayor stated, we were able to start our police academy yesterday. So we have 34 Springfield recruits in the academy, all tested negative and all are able to start up. So we're happy with that. The sooner they get in, the sooner they get out, and we needed them as of yesterday, so that'll work out well. Also, as the mayor noted, we had several gun arrests again over the weekend. Some are disturbing because, again, these people are repeat offenders. Mr. Gregory Critchlow, who we've arrested twice in the last 30 days, is back out. He has a horrendous record which includes many firearm offenses. Friday night, narcotics detectives recovered a loaded firearm, more than 4,400 bags, or 88 grams of heroin, more than $2,700 in cash. 2 arrests were made outside a convenience store on Island Pond Road. 23-year-old Joshua Rodriguez, 22-year-old Giovanni Rodriguez, both of Chicopee. Saturday afternoon at 4 o'clock, we received information about a person who was trying to sell handguns. And again, this is concerning to us because people still are willing and able to give us information. We go and make the arrest, but what if this person is out again tomorrow or next week? You're putting yourself in harm's way because we can't guarantee that you giving us the information or us making the arrest is going to solve the problem. Officers responded to Fort Pleasant Avenue and individuals attempting to sell guns. When officers arrived, he sprinted away, holding his waist area, leaping over first floor railings into a courtyard. We were able to make the arrest, recover a high capacity loaded firearm, heroin, crack cocaine, $2,000 in cash. 26-year-old Joshua Santiago was arrested, and he also has previous firearm convictions. Saturday night at 9:30, narcotics recovered another firearm, arrested a repeat violent offender, 24-year-old Darian Colazzo of West Springfield, 25-year-old Alexis Rivera of Springfield, arrested in the area of Mill and Locust Streets, large capacity loaded firearm, cocaine, and cash. Sunday night, 9 o'clock, officers responded to a disturbance at Holiday Inn Express on State Street with a gun involved. Recovered again a large capacity firearm with a 33-round magazine. 27-year-old Yoran Brown of Atlanta, Georgia was arrested. He has previous firearms convictions in Georgia. The detectives worked hard on cases up in 16 acres where we had the reports of several B&Es into automobiles and into homes. Homes where the house was entered through a back door and keys or a pocketbook was taken off the table, and then he flees the house. They worked hard and were able to identify him as 21-year-old Bobby Guzman Jr. He had several counts of breaking and entering into the houses, into the cars, and also credit card fraud and credit card larceny and unarmed burglary. He was released on bail, $750 bail, he's back out. So that's some of the frustrations and struggles we deal with. We will continue to do our job. We will continue to be out there and be the best we can be, but we certainly do need some help from the courts in holding some of these offenders. The mayor also mentioned that Springfield, as was cited before, was one of the few departments that continued body-worn camera programs even throughout COVID. We worked hard. We now have over 400 officers who are outfitted with the body-worn camera. The DOJ is involved with us because we did receive some grant money, some funds towards this body-worn camera project, which was deeply appreciated. We check with them weekly, and they did let us know that 2 large city departments are doing well as far as the body-worn camera program itself, our policies, our procedures, and the way we've been handling it. And they credited us, along with Tampa, Florida, as being 2 of the top departments working on this. So it's greatly appreciated, and it's not me. It is the people that work for me. It's Deputy Daniel and Lieutenant Geyer and the whole body-worn camera unit, and it's the officers, the women and men who have bought into this program and are doing their due diligence with the program. So I thank them. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner Clapper. We'll now move to the educational component. Superintendent Dan Warwick is here, and I know he has a number of updates to give you, especially pertaining to the ransomware threat that we beat back. Superintendent of Springfield Public Schools, Dan Warwick.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everyone. As the Mayor said, we were hit with a pretty serious cyber attack, a ransomware attack. We've been working on it since Thursday, and we're in recovery and restore mode. We were fortunate; we had backup to all of our systems, so we're not going to lose anything, and we're getting everything backed up now and online. Our priority was keeping teaching and learning going. We're a teaching and learning organization, and we've been able to do that. So we're back up online today as we were on Friday. Credit to my IT department, Paul Foster, and the staff. They've been working tirelessly since this occurred. We also have a consultant that helped us and the FBI. As I said, this was a serious attack, but we were fortunate to have the backup systems in place to withstand the attack, and we're going to move through it. As the Mayor said earlier, the meals program is going great so far. Since March, 3,479,282 meals distributed to families. Just this weekend alone, 94,768. Remote learning, in spite of this attack, like I said, we were off to a great start. We're moving forward with that. We're distributing iPads as we speak for our preschoolers, and our teaching staff has done an absolutely outstanding job executing this program. As the Mayor said earlier, O'Reilly, Talbot, and Ocon, Bob Kirshner is working on our buildings, on our ventilation systems. Again, we don't have an air quality issue. We're just checking our ventilation systems in light of how serious this pandemic is, as our Health Commissioner illustrated earlier. Today, our helpline is backed up, but if you stay with it, they will get to you. Restoring the systems and getting everyone's some of the things we had to do going. There's a backup with help, but please stay with it. And some of the lines going into our schools, we're having some problems because they're tied to the system also. But again, stay with the helpline. We'll get you the help as soon as we possibly can. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Superintendent Warwick. On the street level with DPW Director Chris Signoli is here, and he will give his update. Director Signoli.
Mayor, thank you. With regard to DPW, we have no employees out with COVID. Following last week's storm, normal DPW rules with regard to picking up the debris. It has to be placed on your tree belt. It has to be cut up to a certain length and width and tied up on the tree belt. Dragging large limbs out of your backyard and putting them onto the tree belt will not be picked up, so make sure you look at the DPW and City of Springfield website. One other point I wanted to make for homeowners with regard to storms, one of the things that I noticed a lot is when homes did not have power, most of those residents did not call Eversource. So Eversource had no record that you did not have power.
An assumption was made by residents in one neighborhood. I was standing there about 8:30 at night. 6 people were out of power. Nobody had called Eversource. So they have no idea that you're out without power and the number of houses. One of the things that's extremely important is in a lot of cases, you may need to get your own electrician. So if you're not in the system, you could be 3 or 4 days out and then find out you also have to get your own electrician. So please make sure if you are without power to get a hold of Eversource. We dealt directly with Eversource along with Pat Sullivan and his tree crews. They were dealing with well over 100 individual locations where there was power outages of 5 or more people. So they had everybody basically up and running within 24 hours. Our construction projects will run through the end of November. And some of you have seen some information over the last week. Eversource has now merged with Columbia Gas of Massachusetts, so everything will be running through Eversource with regard to gas and electricity in the city. And just one other note for the Tapley Street facility, you are still required to make appointments to come in. You just can't show up at Tapley and try to obtain permits, whether it's building permits or DPW permits. So please, materials listed on the city website on who to talk to, and we'll be able to make appointments. There's been a big uptick of people just showing up that we have had to turn away out front, so we want to make sure that everybody has an appointment and get the services that they need. That is it, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Signoli. Thanks, Chris. Thank you, Director Signoli. As Director Signoli alluded to, he and myself, Fire Commissioner B.J. Calvi, and Chief of Staff Tom Ash and others met with Vice President Jim Hunt of Eversource last week, and their representatives, Joe Mitchell and Mike Vitavelli, to continue our good working relationship as they take over Columbia Gas. Later this afternoon, I will be with the President of Eversource, again, to make sure that that good working relationship stays in effect with Eversource pertaining to electric and gas for each and every one of you residents in the business community out there. Speaking of facilities and parks and buildings, Director Pat Sullivan is here, and he and his team have done a wonderful job. He will give you an update pertaining to that situation. The Director of Facilities and Parks Management, Pat Sullivan.
Thank you, Mayor. As the Mayor indicated, we are preparing our custodial staff for winter cleaning procedures, and what this will entail is basically more passes with our electrostatic cleaners. Every building, municipal building, has access to those cleaners, and we will probably be doing passes through every half hour. And we feel this is important as we hear from our Commissioner of Health of the increase in cases. But if we use our mask, wash our hands, and use the safe social distance guidelines, we can get back to green hopefully very soon. We've met with the Mayor and Finance, and thank you, Mayor. He's preparing to move forward on over $1 million in supplies and materials to be ready to continue to fight this virus through the winter. We'll have more of an update probably next week on the supplies that we're going to be ordering. And then on non-COVID related issues, as Chris indicated, we were working on the storm cleanup. We had about 30 calls come through over the weekend. If you have a tree that has not been addressed, please call 311 so that can be documented. We want to wrap the storm cleanup by the middle of this week. And then park construction continues across the city. We kicked off the Kennefic Park project today and Walsh Playground last weekend. I just want to give a special shout out to Lauren Stabilo and Theo Theocles at our procurement office. They've done a great job moving all these projects forward during the pandemic. And yesterday we lost power at SciTech. Eversource was on scene, and John Kerrigan and our electrical staff did a great job to determine the source of that failure, and Eversource is working on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. Thank you, Director Sullivan. Again, Springfield's in the business of doing business, and Chief Development Officer Tim Sheehan and the team and I, we continue to work to try to stabilize our existing business in the city, and also continue to move on bringing new business and housing developments and other developments coming to the city, even with this COVID-19 challenge. Director Tim Sheehan will bring you updating on the 2 RFPs, which again will go to small businesses and workforce development. Without further ado, the Chief Development Officer of the City of Springfield, Tim Sheehan.
Thank you, Mayor. As I indicated last week, there was an uptick with regards to folks applying for benefits for the rent relief and mortgage relief and utility assistance. This coming Saturday will be the end of the scheduled end of the eviction moratorium in Massachusetts. In response to that, Governor Baker has made available $171 million in assistance across the state. The vast majority of that funding is going into 2 programs, residential relief through the RAFT program for families that are in transition. That's approximately $100 million, and an additional $48 million is going into the home-based program, which does housing to immediately move families out of emergency shelter situations. And as the mayor indicated previously, we have gone through approximately 25% of the city's allocation of CDBG funding into the mortgage and rent relief program. We're revisiting that and determining if there needs to be additional assistance put in there, and watching how the RAFT money is being deployed. And then finally, as the mayor indicated, we're expecting to have 2 RFPs going out soon, most likely by the end of the week. One with regards to providing workforce training and development in the tech sector, as it's been evident that many jobs, especially low-wage jobs, have somewhat disappeared through the COVID crisis. It's going to be important to quickly retrain those employees and get them back into the workforce as quickly as possible. So this is an RFP that's seeking third-party services to provide technical training to residents of Springfield, again focused on the low and moderate income population. The second RFP is direct small business technical assistance. Many small businesses are dealing with a whole new way of doing business and trying to figure out the best practices in order for their business to maintain itself in business. And this RFP is seeking third-party services to provide that technical assistance to small businesses. Again, as the disproportionate number of businesses that have been impacted negatively by COVID is within that minority population, both black and brown, that is a focus of this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Director Sheehan. You heard the financial update I gave from my CFO, TJ Plant, and the status quo update pertaining to legal, labor, and HR from Solicitor Pakula and Attorney Bill Mahoney. So with that, I will open it up to any questions or comments pertaining to my cabinet heads or myself. Paul?
I have a question for Tim Sheehan.
Director Sheehan, please.
Tim, on the issue with the eviction moratorium ending this Saturday, apparently, the city of Boston announced last week that they've had conversations with their larger property managers about what they intend to do with most of it, and they came before the city that they did not intend to start evicting people on the mass because they're behind on their rents. Has Springfield had any similar conversations with the larger property managers about what their intentions are?
We've talked to a number of property managers. The situation, I think, the courts are going to be backed up for some time with regards to eviction processing. So there's kind of a built-in window. But again, you know, this is a situation where folks that are in need of this type of assistance need to begin to apply for it and get the proper allocation that they need. to deal with it. And again, as the mayor said, it's not just the tenants. I mean, if landlords are having problems with tenants not paying rent, then they need to identify those tenants to us to reach out to and provide the assistance to them. But I think that there's clearly a sense that if they're, the whole purpose of these programs is to keep the housing market stabilized. And if money isn't flowing through the market for rent, then the landlord ultimately doesn't have the available resources to do the improvements, much less pay for their mortgage. So that's the whole purpose of these programs, and it's a two-way street, both between the tenant and the landlords, to make sure that they're accessing the available resources.
And there's still, you said there's still about 75% of $2 million.
Yes. Yes, and it's important to note that the RAF program regulations under this new allocation, it went up to $10,000 of assistance, and it used to be only $4,000. So it's a pretty significant increase.
Just to let you know, too, Solicitor Pakula is working behind the scenes with now retired Housing Court Judge Dina Fine and also private attorney Charlie Casatello pertaining to these issues for people who are going to need assistance and help. But it is a balancing act. You know, we were one of the first to jump out there and put money out there for tenants and homeowners try to pay their utilities and their mortgages and their rents, and in turn have queued up landlords too, especially smaller landlords, because to keep those property goings and keep the tax base and stabilize the housing market. So we're working on multi-faceted prongs. Audrey?
My first question was for you. When it comes to setting up for in-person voting here at City Hall,
Yeah.
you guys are going to prepare for it and to try to avoid crowds and long lines like they had in Georgia?
My election commissioner Gladys Oyola and team have done a tremendous job. We did it for the primary, which was record turnout, and we had no issues. We worked very closely with Commissioner Helen Carlton-Harris, Director Pat Sullivan, on how it is run and directions and spacing out. So again, I would assume that we will not have any issues. And again, Commissioner Oyola, when it comes time, will be making that announcement. And she has done, and her team have done an absolutely wonderful job. But we had a, knock on wood, a very good primary season, which was record-based, and the people that came out to vote. So we'll be ready. And Commissioner Gladys Oyola, I know, will do a tremendous job with her team. Sure. Commissioner Carlton-Harris?
I just want to double check something that you said, because you mentioned that, you know, COVID cases are on the rise in Springfield and around the country. But is it true, did I hear you correctly when you said that we have 34 fewer cases this week than we did last week?
That's correct. There were 166 cases last week. We had 132 cases this week, so that's 34 less cases.
And would you say that you noticed any like positive trends just in seeing those numbers go down?
The positive trend, I think, was probably the 1% trend that we had as far as that under 50 is concerned. So that did go down a bit. But what we also saw on the other end, last week, I did not have any individuals who were in that 80 to 90-year-old age group, and this week there were 2. And so those were the 2 differences that I noticed as far as the data was concerned.
Just to follow up on the state reported last week that they're seeing a similar demographic with an increase in people between the ages of 20 and 30 getting COVID-19. Governor Baker, in one of his briefings last week, acknowledged that that is a difficult group to message. In your conversations with the Department of Public Health over these mitigation efforts that they're going to be bringing, have they addressed specifically how they're going to tailor this message to the 20 to 30-year-olds?
Their PSAs that they have do target that particular age group that we are going to adopt for the city of Springfield. So the messaging really is messaging that's consistent around you are at risk. It's also hopeful that if we talk to that demographic, that they will want to protect their mother, fathers, and grandparents. So if they feel, as young folks, that they are not at risk, we are hopeful through our messaging that we're saying to them, please keep your elders safe. Also, the number of children, young children, and I really tried to focus on the 13 young children that we saw in the data because that's important, and we all want to protect young children as well. So we're hopeful by putting those messages out there that 20 to 30-year-old age group will want to protect their elders and certainly children.
So it's not so much about themselves as it's the rest of your family. That's the message you're going to try to get out.
The message is consistent. We do care about that demographic, that age group, absolutely. But what we know is that when we look at the hospitalization rates, those are not the individuals that we're seeing hospitalized. But we know that the older individuals and families are being hospitalized, and then there are young children who are now becoming infected and are showing some symptoms. And while those symptoms may not be chronic and may go away, they are still symptomatic individuals who can shed this infection, this virus.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. Again, I want to thank the media very much, the TV media, the print media, the radio media for being here to make sure we get this information out. I thank the residents and business community of the city of Springfield for your patience and understanding and your cooperation and collaboration. I have to give a shout out to the 30 and unders, please. You are not invincible. And that's where we're seeing the uptick occurring on this COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. We need to sustain, in my conversations with Commissioner Helen Colton-Harris, we need to sustain a 2-week period of getting to those single numbers or lower double-digit numbers so we can move back down into the yellow, then eventually into the green. We've done it before. We can do it again, but if you don't do that, we need to prepare ourselves. We're coming into the holiday season, and that is going to drastically change your holiday gatherings. I know it's going to change my family's holiday gatherings tremendously, and it's going to have to be very, very limited. But again, we ask you to wear those masks. Always have a mask on you. No matter where you're going, have a mask on you or available to you. Wash your hands constantly. Keep that social and physical 6-foot distance. And if you don't feel good, stay home. If you need to be tested, there's multitude of places that you can be tested. As Helen says, we care about you. We want you to be okay. We're just as aggravated and frustrated as you are. We want this thing gone yesterday. But we have to continue to work together. And I know we will defeat this COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. And I know the powers that be are working very hard to get a vaccine. But I think the new fashion wear is going to be masks for a little while moving forward. In the meantime, as far as the city, we will continue to put out services to the best of our ability. I'm very proud of my cabinet heads, all the way down to the rank and file, who have been tested and true through a number of natural man-made disasters. We worked very hard to protect and preserve our workforce, and we ask you to do the same and be patient. So next time, unless something comes up, whether positive or challenging, we'll see you next Monday, and hopefully the numbers continue to go down, and they will if you keep doing the right thing. To each and every one of you, good health, and may God continue to bless your families. Thank you very much.
Thanks.